Guys, I just want to say to you all, happy belated Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Please enjoy the video and thank you for all your support this year. Everything has mattered to me, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I reached 500 subscribers. Didn't think that I would ever get to that. I know it's not even a blip in the YouTube universe, but once again, I owe it all to you guys. And I want to thank you again. Have a merry and happy new year. Thank you from Backyard Cigars. Hello, and welcome to Backyard Cigars. Today I have something that, if I dare may say, could be very, very special, at least for me. And I'll let you be the judge. So I recently came into possession of a rare vintage cigar, yet again. And this one here was a very, I would say, a very generous offering because the history behind it is intriguing, not so much in that the cigar brand is that decorated, but its recognition in its time and in some of the groundbreaking things that United Cigar was doing with some of their early brands was quite amazing. Now, La Restina Perfecto. So it's in the Perfecto size. It was La Restina Perfecto size. I think they had another one, La Restina Chicos, which were smaller versions. And these cigars basically blended Cuban and Puerto Rican tobacco. And they used Sumatran wrappers and binders. And I've described this before in regards to a lot of the cigars that were being smoked in the early 1900s up until, say, the 1940s and 50s. There was for a while it was the American market selection, the green cigars, and then you had cigars, mostly Connecticut shade. We went through the Sumatran stage, and there were these offerings that were given to the smokers of these times as your only alternative. So everyone's giving you a Indonesian Sumatran wrapper, and that's generally what every cigar line sought to keep in order. That once they pigeonholed what the consumer and the market desired, they were just going to pump that in high volume. And yeah, you still had some people that did things a little differently. Obviously, people in the United States will remember that there's a deep history of Connecticut broadleaf as well as Pennsylvania broadleaf. So you had stogie cigars being made of all Pennsylvania broadleaf tobaccos at one point, or a blend with Cuban tobacco in the early 1900s, and in the late 1800s, that was quite the common thing to do, is to purchase the Cuban tobacco and have it brought in. So these were things that were done because of duties and taxes and tariffs and so forth. But overall, a lot of these companies ended up being centered in Florida and Tampa, of course, specifically. So La Restina has some roots there as well. And this cigar I'm going to say it measures in at about 5.5. And I'm going to give the ring gauge somewhere around, I'm going to say between 42 and 44, maybe leaning more towards 44. And here you go. Look, take a look. I've already done the rinsing let it sit for a few minutes, as I always do. Now, it looks like there's a pre-drilled hole at the tip of the cigar. So I'm going to light it, and we're going to find out. Okay. We're going to find out if that is a... So it is, and I guess over time it was excuse me. I think over time it just kind of filled up. So I'm just gonna give it a little clip, a little bit more than I wanted to, but nothing detrimental to the cigar. Okay. Now I found information on this particular brand, which was owned by United Cigar. I went as far back as 1909. Is as far back as I got. There were articles in 1915, 1916, articles in the early 20s, articles in the early 30s, early 40s, up until the 50s and the 60s. So, and then even until today, of course, there's even more information on the cigar. Very mild right now. Not much, not getting much. Of course, the smaller ring gauge, so I'm not gonna rush this one. Now, I just wanted you to see here the cellophane, which I had to be very careful for with, because I could risk damaging the wrapper if I rushed this one. It was put on pretty. I wouldn't say super tight, but very well secured. It was something that it felt a little stiffer in the hand, but definitely well protected. And I think that this is another reason that cigars from this time, sometimes when maintained correctly, are very durable and really stand the test of time, is because they were well protected, and they had the cellophane with the tight seal on it. And as I've mentioned before, in other cases, they even hermetically sealed them. Now, what I want to show you here is the band, right? So I have to be careful there. I feel like I snagged something. Yeah, it's okay. It's actually okay. So what I want you to look at, since you see this band, right? We're going to take a look at this band. Now here you see La Restina, Tabacos Superiores, superior tobacco. And then you have some foil. But this is interesting here. So you see this here? You can make out Puerto Rico, right? De Puerto Rico, of Puerto Rico. And I'm going to tell you what this is right now, which is, it's kind of stuck here. So what I want you to see is, okay, I'm going to tell you what this is. Let me see if I can pry it from. Okay, so after looking this over and looking at my options for actually removing this band within a band, I realized it's well glued inside to the actual band. And what this was this was the official stamp of authenticity that Puerto Rico would attach to all of their cigars. So all of their cigars that were made in Puerto Rico and were using Puerto Rican tobacco got a stamp. And within the stamp, if I were to able to take it out, you would be able to see there's a grading by color, a dot of color that would tell you how much Puerto Rican tobacco was used for the specific brand. So it would go by different grades, and you would receive a certain color mark indicating that. And I believe one was yellow, or I forget the colors exactly. I've actually mentioned it before in the past, and I'm sorry I don't have an example of that right now. But generally, it was a grading system for the Puerto Rican tobacco, and it was also, again, to ensure authenticity, that it wasn't going to be a knockoff. And yes, some of these cigars were 100% Puerto Rican, and some were blended with Cuban tobacco. In the particular case of La Restina was a blend of Puerto Rican and Cuban tobacco, but the general idea was that it used much more Puerto Rican tobacco than the Cuban. Though I don't have any documentation that would show that, just based off of things I've read, a lot comes back that they used certain grades of Cuban tobacco. We'll get into that a little later. But this was very cool, very neat, that I actually got to see this in person. And it's a shame I can't take it out so that I could display it. It's like a pink stamp, but it's really cool, and it's a nice touch to this experience. And here we have some artwork for some bands that we use for La Restina on the boxes and so forth. And here it says the description: brown-haired woman with flowers in her hair, looking over her shoulder at the viewer. The woman is in gold oval that is surrounded by various flowers. Very mild blended cigars, handmade, all natural tobacco. Brown, red, pink, white, blue, yellow, orange. I don't know what those colors are indicating. And here you have, this is from a Facebook page dedicated to just rediscovering Puerto Rican brands of the past. And as you can see here, La Restina, Havana Blend, Puerto Rico Tobacco Company, Bayamon, Puerto Rico. And here you have another La Restina cigar box. And this is another rendering. And here you have a complete unused cigar box, La Restina. And you see all the cigars. And those cigars, this is it. This is what's in there. There's an even closer look at the La Restina cigar box. And here's an article from the Trenton True American, December 13th, 1909. And as you can see here, on the fire, a Yuli log. On the table, a box of good cigars. That's Christmas. United Cigar Stores, and mentions a couple of their brands, Ricoro being one of them. And La Restina Perfecto, size, box of 25, $2.50. We invite your inspection with no obligation to buy. And here we have the Reading Eagle, December 13th, 1909. And as you can see, cigars go with Christmas as cranberries go with turkey. And you can see La Restina Perfecto, size 250. And when it came to Christmas time, the cigar industry was no slouch. They knew they had a market, and they knew they could push it very, very eagerly during the Christmas time. And here you see the tradition, which ties up cigars with Christmas, is as old as Santa Claus himself. For $2.50 a box, have a choice of brands in United Cigar Stores that stand out as unusual values. For example, Palma de Cuba, Benefactor, La Restina, Orlando, and this is 22 West Federal Street. So before I go on with any more information, I want to tell you about how I've been experiencing the cigar. It's very mild. I'm going to tell you that right now. Super mild. How old is this cigar? Or because that's something that I don't think I specified. I'm going to say that I think this cigar probably dates back to the 1920s, possibly the 1930s. I don't see it past that. The stamp itself was something that came out in the 19 late 1900 1919 1918, and I believe by the 1920s was in full effect. The pink stamp of the Puerto Rican seal of authenticity. So that's why I say that. Again, very mild. Is a little earthy note that's picking up. A little cedar on the finish, just a tad. Nothing sharp, just a hint. A little bit of pepper there, combined with that earthiness. Very smooth, mellow, mild blend. Agreeable, yes, agreeable. But one of the things that I do when I'm smoking a vintage cigar, and I'm not, by the way, reviewing the cigar necessarily. I'm not. I'm experiencing it. I'm informing you about it. And as we go along the way, I'm just going to be frank about how I experience it and how I feel it. But frame of mind, to add context, when I'm smoking a cigar, and it really depends on this specific cigar, but in the case of this era, and some of the brands which I'm familiar with, when I come across them, I sort of know what to expect, and I sort of know that the wrappers are going to be the Connecticut Shade, Indonesian Sumatran binder, equally the same, and you're going to have that either all Cuban or Cuban and Puerto Rican. Generally, that's what you were finding. Um, I think that you have to kind of put yourself back into those times when the flavor profile of choice and the consumer, the smoker, what they desired, their tastes were gravitating towards this milder blend, smooth. There were, of course, medical reasons why a lot of men felt that, or for that matter, why the cigar industry themselves thought that we should present a mellow, mild product, because to some degree, some medical findings indicated that that was better for your health. In other words, a strong cigar will kill you, but a smooth, well flavored cigar would keep you ticking for a longer amount of time. And so that was the general idea, and a lot of men really did believe this. They were starting to smoke smaller cigars as cigarettes were picking up in popularity. Cigar brands wanted to put something out that would compete with these early cigarette trends. And the Panatela was highly successful, the Perfecto, and the little bouquet sizes, little small ones, or the slim Lonsdales. I mean, this was the idea long before anyone thought of a skinny toro. They knew that they wanted something, that the consumer wanted something that not only would smoke well, taste good, be smaller, more compact, as in this box press form here, gently box pressed, but also looked good on them, looked good in their hands, made them look cool, basically. And a lot of the ads that were promoting a certain type of lifestyle, a certain type of look, were about making men feel confident and secure, and knowing that if they purchased their product, they would be subscribing to that. Uh, Whether it was the findings about the milder cigars being better for your health, or if it was just simply the slender, slightly box press shape making you look cool, right? You're at the beach, you've got on a pink shirt or a white shirt, and you just look cool. And that was one of the things that propelled sales back in those days. So if you put yourself in that mindset of, this was a highly pleasing cigar to another level in those days, because they hadn't been exposed to the many things that we've been exposed to by this year in question, 2022. It's a different time, obviously. So many different things have been discovered along the way. So many different tobaccos are now being used, more so in a way that haven't been used in years past. Not that for lack of trying in years past, but technology and, of course, other factors got in the way. Taxes. A little bit of cream and some earthiness. Mild sweetness. It's not. I say this and I'm going to say it again for the millionth time. I don't overlook aroma. I do not. If I don't go on and on about it enough, forgive me, but it is something that is always in my head. Aroma plays such a large role in our lives for so many different things that it shouldn't be an exception when it comes to cigars. Cigars, as we all know, are very aromatic, uh, and each can have a different aroma. Tobaccos from different regions have different aromas as well, and different blends produce amazing aromas without any artificial ingredients, which is key. Okay, now I'm not saying that people haven't cheated in the past and tried to add, pipe tobacco to their cigars to add to the aroma of the cigar. But I think, to me, that's like juicing. You're cheating. You're adding something additional that no one else is doing, and if you're disclosing it, fine. At least we know. But in some cases, you're not disclosing it, and the person that's smoking that cigar is led to believe that this is the best smelling cigar that they've ever experienced, and it's largely, in fact, because there's something additional. Maybe it's not something necessarily artificial, right? It could be a natural additive, but it is still something enhancing that aroma. In this cigar right now, here and now, the aroma that I'm smelling is like it's a velvety type aroma. It's thick, and it's got that aroma of it's almost as if what you're smelling is what you're going to taste, because you can smell the earthiness in the aroma along with some of the creaminess to it, and it's really nice, and it enhances the experience. So if I don't go on and on about it enough, aroma is a big deal, and it's one of the main things that cigar makers strive to get right, because we've all been in the position or the situation where we smell a cigar or someone smoking a cigar, and we automatically want to know what they're smoking. And here we have something from the United Shield, volume 12, January to December of 1915. And it says, "Our Puerto Ricans, we often wonder if our men appreciate the strong position they are in with our famous brands of Puerto Ricans to sell. This is the list: La Restina, Ricorro, La Tunita. La Tuñita. These brands, in their various sizes, cover the range of public taste in wonderful fashion. They are unmatched in quality. We believe by, say, other cigars in the market at the prices, and certainly in comparison with either Puerto Ricans, are conceded to be unequaled. They are made of Puerto Rican tobacco in Puerto Rico by Puerto Rican workmen. These cigars come direct to us from the island of Puerto Rico in regular shipments so that every precaution is taken to get them to the best condition. Puerto Ricans are being smoked more and more because our famous brands have put into the hands of smokers cigars of exceptional quality at reasonable cost. It was the United Cigar Stores which recently introduced the cigar in this country. We put Puerto Rico on the cigar map, so to speak. We did not discover the wonderful quality of the tobacco. The Spaniards knew of it for a century. Under Spanish rule in the West Indies, this tobacco was used in Havana. But once the Spanish War was over and Puerto Rico established a cigar industry of her own, it was the United which held out its helping hand. We took the cigars as fast as they could be made, and through our stores, millions of smokers learned how fine they were. We have held this supremacy over ever since and may claim practical control of the real article as it is imported from Puerto Rico. No type of cigars has held up better than our Puerto Ricans, which we think it is safe to say always recommend to smokers as values beyond compare. If that's not a ringing endorsement, then I don't know what is. But basically, you get the idea here. This was the craze of the moment. It was where it wasn't. It like I've said this before. It didn't start off all rosy. It was not a rosy outlook initially. There was a rejection of the Puerto Rican tobacco and those brands and those cigars, and there was a lot of skepticism. But eventually, you know how they say, if it's good, it'll eventually sell. Now, this might echo something that I just kind of said, and this is from the Printers Inc., New York, November 23rd, 1916. And it says, advertising in this business creates demand. Most advertising men would probably give the United Cigar Stores Company credit for coming as near as anybody can get to knowing what the public wants in cigar quality. But according to C.R. Sherlock, advertising manager of the company and one of its directors, popularity in cigar flavors is as much due to advertising as it is to a conscious personal preference. Taste change, says Mr. Sherlock. The preference today is generally for mild cigars and mild cigarettes and mild smoking tobacco. I don't think that is mainly because cigar smokers have become wiser or more nervous. I think it is chiefly because the milder brands have been pushed and advertised. A rather significant testimonial to advertising when you come to think of it. If true, the United Cigar Stores, with more than 1,000 outlets they had at that time, could probably have picked almost any good type of cigar, made a national market for it, and given it a strong advantage over most other brands by advertising. But the company was looking as ever for some special, peculiar, exclusive advantage. The cigars of reputation are, of course, the Havana or imported cigars. Now, it so happens that since the Spanish American War, a certain class of cigars have been coming in duty free. These are the Puerto Rican cigars. It is still permissible to speak of them as imported. And that's with quotation marks. The Puerto Rican tobacco crops are controlled by a few large companies. It is not possible for many manufacturers to develop a demand for Puerto Rican cigars and make sure of supplying it. If it was feasible, however, for a company of United Companies' importance to make an arrangement with one of these companies in Puerto Rico, and this it did years ago with the Puerto Rican American Tobacco Company. The United Cigar Company had the tobacco made up into three principal brands or qualities: Ricoro, La Tuñita, and La Restina. And in the usual different shapes, Ricoro is in its most popular shape a 6 cent, La Tuñita a 5 cent, and La Restina a 10-cent cigar. Along with these advantages went one possible disadvantage. Puerto Rican tobacco, good as it is, has not appealed to everybody. That is suggested by the fact that while the United Company has been selling an increased number of Puerto Rican cigars through its own stores, the importation by other manufacturers as a whole has shown a distinct falling off. That may have been the reason why Puerto Rican cigars have had such a long tryout in the United stores. It was too good a chance to miss if it could possibly be put over. Because, too, the cigar field is almost virgin territory when it comes to advertising and real competition. Profits have not been almost thrown away as they have in the cigarette field. There is still a good margin left, in spite of the recent big rise in costs. And of course, the United, as already said, had a very special extra inside price on its own brands. The campaign was laid out to start in 2 weekly magazines. A few newspapers may be added later. The earlier schedule called for inside covers and double spreads. Later, smaller space will be used. A well-known advertising writer prepared the copies. And it goes on to just state the force of the advertising strength that United Cigar had and how they could, direct and almost dictate what the consumer was going to like. It was almost as if, and what Sherlock is referring to when he says that the advertising drove the tastes and thus allowed cigar makers to just put out what the consumer exactly wanted. But was it what they really wanted, or was it what the cigar companies wanted you to want? You get what I'm saying? So that was part of it, and of course, like I mentioned before, in not mentioned in this article, but the medical concerns, and as Sherlock himself stated, not because the consumer has gotten wise or more nervous. And when he's talking about that, he's talking about in regards to health and just overall consumption, in limiting consumption, which was, of course, something that would go. It would be a heavy topic throughout the 20s and 30s. I mean, when you talk about prohibition and consumption, I know you're talking about alcohol and mentioning prohibition, but it kind of goes with the territory, like especially what happened after General Grant died of throat cancer, and it sent the industry into a tailspin for quite a number of years. Now, it didn't stop the cigar industry from growing, but it certainly did do something in regards to sales for a short period of time, and even for certain things later on. Now, let's continue. Now, here we have from the Vancouver Sun, December 17th, 1921, extra special La Restina cigars made from the small Havana leaf, packed in cedar boxes and sold in the regular way for $2.50, special for a box of 50 cigars. And then you see so this is here talking about small Havana leaf, might be referring to short filler being blended in these cigars with the Puerto Rican tobacco. And you ask me, why don't they mention Puerto Rican tobacco? Well, it's 1921. They don't really want to talk about Puerto Rican tobacco just yet. Not really. I mean, they're pushing it, but they're not pushing it in that way. They're still hanging their hats on Cuba and whatever they can mention in regards to the cigar, and in this case, the use of small Havana leaf, more than likely short filler, would be what they're talking about. I want to talk real quickly about something. Oh, just got a nice bit of cream and pepper in the finish. That was very nice. Um, when we're talking about vintage cigars, I don't want to tell you that I'm a specialist in any way or that I am some kind of authority on the subject, because I'm not. But I have done extensive research and I have come across something that I've read many, many times, and that is that some of the big time experts within the industry, respectable figures, believe that you must retrohale when it comes to smoking vintage cigars in order to truly appreciate what that vintage cigar has left, if anything. And it's mentioned also as not necessarily being a must, but being something that would be an enhancement. And I wanted to share my thoughts about that with you. And my thought about it is because those of you who've known or seen my, I think, a 5-part series on retrohaling, is that generally my thoughts are you don't need to retrohale uh, uh, any cigar to enjoy it. And in many different ways, it can enhance or actually negate a good experience. It can actually be a negative in some instances. And we talked about that. But when we're talking specifically about a vintage cigar, a lot of the top experts recommend it to fully enjoy it. And my stance on that is maybe, maybe. Um, I'll do one or two, maybe three with vintage cigars. And not because I feel I have to, but just to sense a little extra of what it once was. And I'll probably only do it when I feel that the cigar is really mild and not really offering me as much flavor due to its age, due to the blend, etc., etc. But in the case of this cigar at this very moment, I can tell you that I haven't done any retrohales. Well, that's only half true. I've done my version of the retrohale. If you want to know more about that, you got to watch the retrohale videos. But apart from that, I've gotten a lot of flavor from this cigar. It's really delivered. It's really picked up in the second half. Just cream, hints of cedar and light pepper with earthiness. And a creamy, velvety aroma and finish to it. It just finishes creamy and smooth, and it delivers on the aroma in the process. So, again, going back to that, that's my take on retrohaling with vintage cigars. You don't need to do it. You don't. But am I going to deny the fact that it can enhance it just a little bit? It can, maybe not even just a little bit, maybe a lot in certain cases when you're not getting much from the cigar. But there are vintage cigars that I've had, and they're so flavorful. They have so much vibrancy left in them that it astonishes me. And sometimes it's not the boldness of the flavors, but it's just how well they are delivered and how well you experience that overall smoke. So those are things to keep in mind. This is from the Fitch Bond book, published in 1921 by the Pitch Publishing Company. And they say, part here, organization incorporated in New Jersey in 1899. Business established in 1897. The American Tobacco Company up to the time of the dissolution, held 66% of the capital stock of this company. The company is a large manufacturer of cigars and cigarettes. Among the company's best known brands are Ricoro, La Restina, Portina, La Tuñita, and El Toro. And it then just gives you some numbers on their sales. And that takes care of 1921. This is an ad from the Vancouver Sun, January 11th, 1922, La Restina cigars. La Restina cigars are exceptionally nice little smokes, 3 3/4 inches long and just suitable for all who want a cool small cigar. Specially packed in separate wrappers and cedar boxes, and then listing the price per 50. I'm getting a little bit much more cedar and a peppery spice in the finish right now, with a hint of sweetness. This is from the United Wheel and Shield, volumes 20 to 22, 1923. Why La Restina sells. And it goes on to list all of the different qualities that La Restina offers the consumer. La Restina, in maintaining a high prestige, it is, as deserves to be, one of the best sellers among 18-cent cigars. So now it's up to 18 cents. 1923, now we're talking, it's not a 10-cent cigar anymore. It's an 18-cent cigar. It's a big difference. And now here we have the tobacco, a weekly trade review, Miami, Ohio Valley Cigar Leaf. And this is an issue from October 1924. United to start La Restina advertising soon. And then it details some of the progress that is being made in regards to advertising for La Restina, and that is 1924. Now, in the Printer's Ink, which is another publication, here we have an ad from September 28, 1960, La Restina cigars. Made exclusively for Simpsons by one of Canada's leading markets. These are the cigars with the firm feel, the easy draw, the fine mild taste preferred by the man who knows cigars. And by this time, La Restina had been sold. I don't know what the quality had fallen to. Is 1960. It was probably still using Cuban tobacco, still probably using some Puerto Rican tobacco, maybe short filler. I'm not exactly sure what the quality was by 1960, but I do believe that the company had changed hands and the brand had been sold. But that's not to say that it wasn't still a very good cigar. But based on the price, it looks like it was sort of a good deal cigar back in those days. Not that, there weren't many of those. And then finally here, you can see that this is from purotrader.com. It's La Restina Cazadores, La Restina number 1, La Restina Robusto. These cigars are still made in Puerto Rico, and some of them contain Puerto Rican tobacco, some contain Pennsylvania tobacco, or other forms of alcohol of tobacco, but they do not contain Cuban tobacco. How am I enjoying the cigar? I'm enjoying the heck out of it. Let me tell you. Usually, you sometimes, depending on the age of the cigar, you won't get as much flavor as you want to extract from it, even if you do your tricks. But I think here, once you hit the second half of the cigar, it really just took off and it started delivering with nice notes of cedar and light pepper in the finishes, and just an overall creaminess with an earthy feel to it. Decadent smoke, creamy, intriguing and alluring aroma. Something that I love when that happens. And it's just a pleasure to smoke. It really is. La Restina. Um, this is it. This for me, I think is really extra special because of the little seal that I found underneath the band, with which which really told me a lot about the history of the cigar. So it is definitely a museum piece, and that's a band I won't be throwing away anytime soon. This has been really cool, really fun, and very enjoyable. I want to thank you all for watching. Till next time on Backyard Cigars.